push a mind to a limit where it needs to feed. I work blind, got vision I don't need to see. I'm picking mind over matter, I believe in me. I need to find more hours in the day to breathe. Need to find more power in the way I be. And when my mind turns sour with the painful scenes, I need to scream out loud.
All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, we are on an epic pace. I think we've now lost, 10 straight games. These are records that, well, we weren't expecting to be setting records when we started this show again. We certainly were not expecting this kind of record.
Yeah, 100th anniversary of the team. I think John Mara wanted a special season. I don't think he's getting the special season he wanted. He's getting a historic season. 10 in a row is a record. I had to double check that. It is a franchise record to lose 10 games in a row, which is something given some of the seasons this franchise has had over the 100-year history. So, I just wanted to say, just off the top, I know you and I have been trying to keep these podcasts a little bit upbeat and positive in the sense that we're at least trying to be, you and I are trying to have some fun and have some humor, but this is, it's getting to the point where this is just nauseating. I mean, it's just, for Giants fans out there who, again, the world doesn't revolve around the Giants. The world doesn't revolve around sports, but those of you who this team matters, this is just disgusting and it's sickening and it's embarrassing. And I feel for you. And the low light for me personally this week was my two kids who I love dearly and love me dearly, hopefully, saying to me separately that they would like to watch the Eagles Commanders game. Which was on at the same time as the Giants were on, and I don't blame them. And they saw a hell of a game watching, I missed it. I had to watch the highlights later, but they saw a hell of a game watching that game. And it's sad because you and I have talked about this, a whole generation of Giants fans aren't going to watch this because it's terrible. Why would you subject yourself to this?
Right. And I know you didn't mean it to be humorous, and we're trying to be serious, but the humor part about it, when you said special, the first thought I thought for the Giants 2024 season is they're the Tim A version of South Park special. And if this was an astronomy class, the Giants are flat earthers. So there you go. That's where we're at right now. It's bad. It's so bad.
And the opening that we used, hopefully it shows up in the beginning of this video, is symbolic.
Oh my gosh.
It's symbolic of the disaster of the season. It's like, so equate the Giants with the Porta-Johns raining their, whatever you want to call it, down on us fans. That's what we're being exposed to right now. So I thought it was a perfect clip, symbolic clip.
The only other thing that we should have added to it, and I thought about it, I'm thinking about it now, and maybe when you watch this, I might have already done it, is we needed also we need like Randy Quaid going, the shitter's full.
Yes.
Because at this point, I mean, that's what this has become. It's funny. The Giants took the lead in the game on Sunday, and at no point in time, truthfully, did I worry about draft pick or anything else. I'm like, they're not going to win this game. I don't care what happens. There's no way they're going to win this game. And I just didn't expect it to fall off. They took the lead and then it just fell right off the cliff. If you're a person who believes, let's talk about this a little bit, because there's a lot of people keep saying it. Cy said it on our previous episode, that the Giants might literally be soft tanking, i.e. they're not just going out there and going, here's the ball, but they're not trying to win. If you're a person who believes that, was Sunday validation for that belief?
I find myself agreeing with Cy 95% of the time. And I don't want to believe him in this case. And I don't think he's correct in this case. He could be. We're going to find out very soon. We're going to find out in a month. what is today? December 23rd. We'll find out. Actually, we'll find out what 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Could be.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it's in the DNA of this franchise to soft tank. I think that means I think that if they're soft tanking, it means you were correct early on in the season where you thought there might be an agreement that no matter what, they're coming back. My statement back then was it's easy to say that they're going to come back when what was the record at the time? 2-5 or whatever.
Something like that. Yeah.
So every week that goes by, every loss that piles up, and now the games are getting out of hand. 35-14 last week, 34-7 this week. They're getting out of hand. People are really upset that the ones that are still tuning in are really upset. It's not just the people flying the airplanes. I mean, people are really angry. And you and I have talked over the weeks and months about if a team gets the stink of losing on them, it's hard to get off. I think coaching staffs and front offices can fall prey to that too. So how do you bring back this coaching staff at this point? And if you do, are the players even, I mean, are they already lame ducks? Are you already setting yourself up for, again, keeps talking about this, a lame duck season? Van Reeves came back. I don't think they're tanking, but if they are tanking, I don't know if that's a good thing either. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. The problem I have with the tanking idea is if that was the case, why did you wait so long to pull Daniel Jones, who literally was, now that we've seen, your best chance of winning with him at quarterback? We've seen since then, they weren't winning with these other guys. So why would you leave them in as long as you did? I have always felt like they were put on notice that said you wanted something else because it seemed obvious. Shane wanted a different quarterback. Daboll seemed very excited about Daniel, seemed very excited about May, and that was shown to the world. You didn't get them. Whatever happened behind the scenes that we didn't see about that, whether they knew you weren't going to be allowed, you're not giving the farm away to move up, but we know you don't want him, but you need to prove to me that he's not the guy. So they go get Neighbors. If that was the agreement, was we're going to go you got to go as long as possible until it seems like we can't really be in it anymore before we give up on Jones. You're coming back if he fails. That's on me if he fails. That would be a John Mara thing. That's the only thing that makes any sense if that's true about the soft tanking, but the tanking didn't happen until halfway through the season. I don't buy it. I do think there was some weird kind of agreement for whatever reason, but I also think you're right. It sounded good when maybe they might be 4-13, 5-12, but 2-15 on what would be a 12-game losing streak. I can't imagine. How do you bring that guy back?
I don't know. And I should correct myself from last week where I kept saying 13 games. There are my math skills. 12 games. They'll end up losing 12 games in a row. I don't know. And it's not just the 12 games, which in itself is enough. I mean, it's enough. Right. Say they even win the last 2 games. They still lost 10 games in a row. No Giants coach in history has ever done that. And we're talking about some doozies of, again, no one likes to hear his name. Ray Handley didn't lose 10 games in a row. Joe Judge didn't lose 10 games in a row. I mean, so we're talking historically bad. They're not competitive. People who are saying injuries. The injuries didn't pop up until the last few weeks.
Right.
Don't give me that crap. And my preview article talked about it. People who didn't see it, all the reasons why I think Daboll's on thin ice, and all the reasons why I think Shane is on thin ice, and you know, the tanking argument doesn't work for me from this perspective. It's what I talked about earlier. Drew Lock is going to be a free agent who is not coming back to this team. It does not make any sense in any stretch of the imagination for him to throw 2 pick sixes, because it doesn't help him he wasn't deliberately doing that because it doesn't help him in free agency in the offseason. Drew Lock's not tanking. Drew Lock's playing for his next contract. There are other guys on this team that are playing for the next contract. So it's harder to me to have a football team in an era of a pro team in an era of free agency to tank if the players are involved. Now,
Sure.
maybe you can say they're tanking because they're setting up the players for failure by putting so many guys on IR and by playing Drew Lock in the first place. I don't know. I don't think they're tanking. Long story short is this. Thanks to the Raiders winning, they've got the first pick in the draft right now. So some people are very excited about that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's a clear cut, oh my God, we have to get this quarterback in this draft. There are two guys that everyone's talking about, and we'll talk about them in this.
Yeah.
And hopefully one of them ends up being the next guy, because I'll tell you what, I'm looking at Drake May right now, and I'm looking at Jaden Daniels right now, and I'm like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we were so close to getting one of these two. And so if they're tanking or they're not tanking, the good news is we're in position of that. The question is do you want, and this is a question for you and others out there who if they want to comment in the comment section, do you want Shane and Daboll to pick the next quarterback? Do you trust them to pick the next quarterback? There are pros and cons to this. They obviously thought highly of Daniels, and they obviously thought high of May. We've got that on tape. We know that. And we know they tried to trade up for one of them. They knew they couldn't trade up for the other, Daniels, but we know that they thought it was worth an effort to try to trade up if he did fall. So they did that. But on the flip side, they're the ones who gave Daniel Jones this huge contract that got us into this mess in the first place. So do you trust them? Do you trust it able to run an offense? Do you trust a coach that's lost 10 games and is going to lose 12 games in a row to come back and turn this team around? Is there anything out there for you, John, that you say if Daboll comes back, there's something that there's a reason why I think he should come back? I don't see it.
So no. And the reason is and I want to touch this in a minute. You shared the post by R. Stapleton.
Yeah.
I've commented back to him on it a couple of times. I think it's ridiculous his stance, but we'll get to that in a second. We started 6-2 in 2022. I've said this numerous times. We went 3-5-1 after that. We had a point differential overall in the first 8 games of which we were 6-2 of +6. So we were winning, but we were winning very close games. There were turnovers involved. It wasn't a murderer's row of opponents. We did have the Ravens. The Packers were decent, but we beat a Tennessee team that was very flawed. We beat a Carolina team, 2 turnovers right in the first 2 possessions in the first quarter, and we won the game by 3. So we didn't have, the offense wasn't great. It was a bad roster. We went 3-5-1. We had a point differential of -12. So from the first 8 games of 2022, 6-2. Since that time, if you go the rest of 22, 3-5-1, 23, we were 6-11. Daboll's won 9 games out of 26. Well, now here you are. Fast forward. Now we've won 11 games out of what? We are now 2-13. So so now you've won out of 39. 11 out of the last 39 games, 37 games, whatever it is. We're just going down, 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 down. And the problem is, you always have that statement, it can always get worse. So as far as the way the things are going under Daboll, I keep thinking, man, they've really bottomed out. This team's bottomed out. And then something else happens. You're like, oh, no, I guess I was wrong. They can actually play even worse. And I know the players have changed, but who picked them? Right. Who picked these players? It's not just who drafted them, but who picked them to make the team. We've had very weird roster decisions. We've talked about multiple times. Special teams has been kind of played around with. It's the opposite of Joe Judge, who Joe Judge went and got a whole bunch of just special teams only guys to cover. We had multiple guys that their job was to cover special teams. They couldn't play any other position, but we thought we would carry them. Now we got guys who can't return. We seem to get rid of returners, and the guy gets injured, then he's gone. We don't have a returner, so we play people that aren't returners. We have the weird kicker stuff. Then there's just kind of what happened, as you've brought up. don't forget Drew Lock, as we talked about saying, if you pull Jones, just throw DeVito in. There's no point in playing Lock because, what are you trying to do? But that's not their mindset. Their mindset was, we still want to win games.
Right.
But you jumped the backup quarterback and went to the third string guy. So why was he the backup then? Why was he even on the team?
Doesn't make any sense.
So your question is basically like, is there anything that Daboll's done that you can go, that's the one thing that I think we're missing here, that he's a good coach? No, I can't think of one thing. I don't like what he does during the game. He's so inconsistent in his decision-making of what he's going to do. He's inconsistent with the roster putting it together. He's had issues with his coaches, the people he picks. He's had issues with. He's changed his whole demeanor, and it seems to be after all the stuff leaked about him and Wink and all the BS. So this year he's kind of a little bit different. But every now and then you see it come out with the players. But to me, it's like one of those. It's like a dog who barks at stuff after stuff has already happened, and then now they're walking away and the dog barks. He's getting mad at Drew Lock for what look at what's happening on the field. Malik Neighbors can't line up properly when it goes before the snap. Jalen Hyatt can't get lined up right and causes another one that I guess you could say it was Neighbors. It probably was on Hyatt. You've got guys constantly doing things that you're just like, what the hell have you practiced any of this stuff?
Right.
And that's where I'm like, okay, so if you come into another season and now we have the first pick in the draft or even the second, doesn't matter, and you bring in a rookie quarterback, the rookie quarterback has a long leash because they're a rookie quarterback. But your head coach has one that's tied basically right at the stake. He has no leeway for failure. He can't live off the leash that the quarterback has. That's not going to happen. If we fail horribly, you've got a receiver who's already kind of showing diva-like attitude pieces, not necessarily but he's clearly not happy with the way he gets used. He's not happy with the way the team is going, and he clearly isn't happy with who that's quarterback. He doesn't always blatantly say it, but you can read into a lot of the way he says things that he's just not happy. He dogs almost every Friday practice, by the way, and I know he has lingering injuries, but why do they only bother him on Friday? Don't know.
Yeah.
So if you bring that quarterback in and you struggle, now you got a receiver who's unhappy. That quarterback is not going to be listening to this head coach that he knows is probably not going to be there. So now you're going to have another head coach come in. So that's where I'm like, well, if we're going this route, he's got to go. He's got to go. And then if you go one step further, then the guy who picked him, the guy who gave Daniel Jones, as far as we know, unless somebody comes right out and goes, John Mara made me do it, he gave him that contract. I don't have a problem if that's the decision-making you made to get to a certain point. What I do have a problem with, you had a 2-year out. That's what we talked about constantly, even before we did the show again. We posted all the time. They clearly built a 2-year out here, right? That was a thing that we all knew.
Right.
You didn't even make it to 2 years.
Right.
You dropped him a year and a half. If it's so bad that's the case, then why the hell did you give him that contract at all? That to me says there is definitely something we're missing in that string of events that led to this contract. Because clearly, if you're going to do it, you ride it out. I know the injury piece, but we didn't worry about the injury piece until the 10th game. We were already pretty much out of it at that point. And he was taking shots. You were running quarterback sweeps. If you were worried about the injury, you stopped calling the quarterback to run power plays. You go, no more of that. If you have to run and get out of bounds. But we're not going to call design runs. But they did. So the injury thing really didn't come into play until they decided to pull him off and move him all the way to the back.
Right.
I just feel like if you're going to reset, which this is, and now I'll turn it back to you. Who on this team are you really confident you're going to build around? Is there enough of them that you can say Joe Schoen is the reason we have that group, so I kind of want him to continue to add to it? Or do we just not have enough players really to say we can build around, and you clear the deck of the head coach and the general manager and let them restock the roster?
Well, that's the $1 million question. So I've been very wary since 2006 of making statements too early, making very strong statements that I would regret. Because back in 2006, I thought Tom Coughlin was basically on the way out. I thought the way, even though they made the playoffs that year, the way that season went, I just felt he wasn't the right fit. And that was the most wrong I've ever been with the Giants, because Tom Coughlin went on to win 2 Super Bowls. I was really down on Tom Coughlin. So I've been very guarded about making very strong, opinionated statements that would come back and bite me in the ass. And some of these things that I wish I don't do that, because some of my gut instincts end up being correct. And I'll give you a minor example and then a major example. Minor example was, I didn't like when they signed Nate Solder. I thought I thought they had disaster written all over it, and I bit my tongue and I didn't say so at the time. And I wish I had said, this is stupid, this is wrong. And by the way, I did say the Evan Neal pick was dumb, and I took a lot of grief at it, because not because I thought he was going to be a bad player. I just think you didn't draft a right tackle. In the top 10.
Yep.
So, I just think that the situation is so bad right now, so toxic right now, that I don't see how you roll this back with the fan base and try to convince them that this is going to be okay next year. Because the fan base, can you find anybody who's actively defending these guys other than the reporters? I mean, and I want to get into that too, because the reporters defending this right now, to me, is very odd. It's kind of flipped. Back in the day when they smelled blood in the water, the reporters used to go after and jump on the coach, like Tom Coughlin back in 2006. They all turned on Tom Coughlin. Right now, it seems like at least half the reporters covering this team are almost like employees of the Giants, saying why they should get another chance, which is very, very bizarre to me. But I just have a hard time seeing the fan base getting excited about rolling this group back, for all the reasons Cy talked about and you and I have talked about. What's the identity of this team? What are they trying to build? Like what you just talked about, who are we building around? And that ties in with the identity, and what are we trying to do? We talked to Cy, and you and I talked separately with ourselves about what's this passing offense trying to do, what's the running game trying to do, what's the defense all about. When you're still asking those kinds of questions 3 years into this regime, I just don't know where if they come back, say in 3 weeks, you and I are doing a podcast and it's announced that they're staying with Mara comes out and says, we're going to make some changes, but Daboll's coming back and Shane's coming back, and we're going to get the first round draft pick, the first pick in the draft, and we're going to change this around. I mean, are you going to feel good about that? Will you feel good about that?
No, God, no. No, I'm really worried. The biggest change in the Giants organization, like physically changed where they were at, in many ways was based on, I don't say luck per se, but in many ways it was luck. The Giants finished in the draft order second in 1981. If the New Orleans Saints take Lawrence Taylor, there is a good possibility the Giants take George Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
Heisman Trophy winner, going to put him in the backfield. The Giants would not be the Giants today if that had happened.
No.
So sometimes it is more circumstance that leads you to where you need to go versus your own. So I feel like getting first almost puts the one piece that we seem to be not so great at is when we can just decide what we want to do versus things kind of fell our way.
It's so funny that you bring that up, because I had the exact same thought today. I really thought maybe it's not such a good idea that we have the first pick, that we maybe would be the second pick, because maybe if we have the first pick, we'll take the wrong guy. I mean, I've thought that.
I mean, think about this, right? How hard would it be if the Giants, let's say right now we have the first pick, which we do. Let's say the draft is today. Let's say everything is the way it is right now, which is Shadeur Sanders is talked about all over the place. He's well known. His dad is famous. He just won the Heisman, or he was part of winning the Heisman. Hunter won the Heisman, but he was
Right.
there. He's throwing passes to Malik in the street.
Giants have scouted the hell out of him.
We've
Brown
gone there
talked to the
twice.
team. Yeah.
Are the Giants going to go? Cam Ward is the better prospect, though, and take him over Sanders after all that? There's no way. You're going to have to. You're literally. I mean, so here's the thing. Quite frankly, I would not. I prefer Cam Ward. I said this back in the summer. I thought Cam Ward
You did say that.
I thought he was a guy to keep an eye on. He's got flaws, though. I'm really worried about just taking a quarterback with the number one pick just because. But at the same time, we don't have a choice.
Right. And that's what the other part of my statement was. I lost my train of thought when I said there was a minor thing with the Nate Solder. The other thing that I wish I had said at the time, but I bit my tongue, was, and I kind of alluded to it since then, that, and I'll say it right now, the contract that they gave Daniel Jones, I think really was the death knell for both these guys. I think it's just when they get fired now because of it. Is it going to be at the end of this year or is it going to be the end of next year? But I don't think they're going to be able to overcome and people. Some people are going to say out there are going to say one decision can't sink a regime, and I'll say yes, it can, because if the decision was so catastrophic, and the Daniel Jones contract was catastrophic. And some people are going to say, well, it was only a 2-year deal. It's not catastrophic. It set everything else up. It led exactly to where we're at right now, where this team is in year 3. And they were on the right path in year 1, and they got off that right path. They stopped the rebuild. They started thinking that they could compete if they just made tweaks to the roster, which is the exact goddamn thing they did with Eli Manning. Instead of saying, we've got major structural problems, and we've got to redo this whole thing, they kept saying, and Gettleman did this, Reese did this, Gettleman did this, and now the current regime's doing this, where it's all reactive. It's all fix this. It's, again, the whack-a-mole that John C. talked about.
Said, yeah.
Let's fix this. And there's no plan here. And when they did that contract at the time, I thought this is going to sink them. And I wish I had come out and said that. But again, I'm trying to not be the guy that hits the panic button and look like, but I think they're never going to be able to overcome this. And whether they get fired this year or next year, I hope they don't. If they keep them, I hope they don't get fired next year, because I don't want to go through this again. But I just feel like, the whole thing, it's so bad. We're historically bad. We're horrible on offense. Look at I put it on the front page of the website. I did the write up after the game a little bit differently. I wanted people to see what all 11 drives of the Giants look like in this game. So there were 11 possessions that the Giants had, and they had 1 touchdown drive, and the other possessions are all 3 and out, or pick sixes, or a fumble, or a turnover and downs. But most of them they didn't even get a first down on the drive, and they only got 8 yards or minus 10 yards or whatever. And this was against a Falcons team that's playing a rookie quarterback who we passed on. And you turn on the TV and watch the NFL, and there's a lot of bad football throughout the NFL right now.
Sure.
But most teams are at least in games. You can watch a game and see another bad 3-win team, and at least they're in the game and the game's close. And we're losing by 3-4 scores now. And I just don't see how I know Cy says there's a soft tank going on and they're bringing them back, but that's going to be a hard sell to this fan base. That's going to be a really, really hard sell to this fan base.
So 2 things. And the first thing I'm going to say is going to sound like I'm completely going against you, and I'm not. But I do disagree just slightly on the one decision shouldn't sink a thing. I kind of agree with that theory. It shouldn't. The problem is you're talking about one monumental mistake, but we're leaving out all the other things that you've done wrong.
Oh, sure. There's a lot of other things.
You didn't trade Barkley when you should have and could have, and that would have made sense if you were planning to keep Jones and you weren't planning to give Barkley the contract. You should have traded him. You didn't.
Xavier McKinney, same thing.
You go and then you go out of your way into a draft and you say, oh, we know we got by with a very mediocre roster, and we've given our quarterback a big contract. So what is your first thought to do? You go and get a cornerback. No matter what, you were locked in a number in the first round. You were going to get a cornerback. You made it pretty obvious that's what you were going to do.
Right.
That guy is not really played out the way you wanted, and he was designed for the defensive coordinator we no longer have, by the way. Right. So you really took what was there. So again, it's kind of the whack-a-mole thing. We need a cornerback, so we'll just do that. But your roster was so still kind of that we really should have just been drafting really good players at any position to fill that up.
And then, I would argue the center falls into that category
to the next round. Yeah. But then we did it again. Even though the draft seems okay, we did it again in 24. You went and said, we're not getting a quarterback. There were still 3 available when we picked. Right. You didn't want any of those guys. You went and got Neighbors because we need to get a weapon for Jones. We got to justify that contract. Okay, you got your dog, which I hated that when they said it over and over again. Got our dog. He's a dog. Well, he's dogging a lot of it right now. So I don't know. Don't give me all the receptions, because I watched Brian Thomas with a really bad Jaguars team, and that dude is making some really long touchdowns and everything else. Neighbors drops a lot of passes, and I'm not liking a lot of some of his demeanor on the field. Again, you're losing. It sucks. I get it. But for now, second round, we wanted a corner. We were going to get a corner no matter what. But then the 2 guys that we had labeled were gone. So you just go and get the third corner. Well, who else was on the board, by the way, at that time at other positions? I would love to see the board. Who did we have? Because if you took somebody who's here and there was somebody up here at a different position, then you ignored your previous principles as we take the best player. If we got somebody rated fairly high on the board, that supersedes need.
Right.
But you didn't. We made need, and we did the center. We did it again with the corner. Andre Phillips is a good player, but again, it seemed like you did that. Or was it? Did we get Phillips first and then Newman, or Newman and Phillips? Newman first. Doesn't matter. You went defensive back because we lost McKinney. Then you went corner. So you forced those positions no matter what. So I don't like. It's not just the one decision. It's just the one that stands out so bad because every other decision that you made. This is a thing I talk about all the time. My wife will be like, if only this had happened. I'm like, if that had happened, every other decision that we made after that would be different. So you don't know how it plays out. You made the decision to get Jones. Every choice that you made afterwards is based on the fact that you did that. But you're not sold on that. So you built in a 2-year out, but you didn't do what the Falcons did, which I think was stupid at the time for giving the huge contract and immediately drafting the successor. But now it's kind of smart on their part. But at the same time, we didn't do that. We gave the guy a lot of money, and then we go, hope it works out. If not, we got 2 years.
Well, what's weird about the Giants thing is this. We haven't talked enough about this. I won't spend a lot of time on this because we have so much to talk about. But we didn't talk enough about this because I think everybody just breathed a sigh of relief when Daniel Jones was gone. But it was pretty monumental to cut Daniel Jones in the middle of this season. I mean, yes. it really was. For this franchise to do that. So I do give them credit for doing that. I actually give them credit for finally saying and recognizing, and they don't want to admit this. The only reason they really pulled the plug on him, in my opinion, was a $23 million risk of continuing to play him at this point, because I think that's why they cut him. I think they benched him. They benched him, and then he wanted to be released, and it would have been a distraction anyways to keep him around. So just get rid of him. I give them credit for that. But you would think if they were that game planning this out, that possibility must have been in their minds going back before this. I hope it was. I hope somewhere Shane and Daboll were saying, if this doesn't work out with Daniel, and there's this $23 million risk here, we're going to cut him during the season. So if they were thinking that way at the time, that's why you would think maybe that's where they would have, quarterback would have become a more pressing need in the draft where Nix, Penix, and McCarthy went
Right.
after the Giants, you would thought they would have reached there or traded down a little bit and picked one of those guys. Because in the back of their head, and again, we kind of saw it in Hard Knocks again too. They weren't sold on Daniel. I mean, it's obvious.
No.
I mean, that's stating the obvious. They're not sold on Daniel because they're talking about trading up for Jaden Daniels. They're talking about trading up and they scouted all the quarterbacks. We know they scouted all the quarterbacks. So we know in the back of their head that Daniel could flame out, which he did, which a lot of us expected him to do. A lot of us were afraid he was going to get hurt again, and thankfully that didn't happen again. So if that's in their head, then why were they acting coming into the season again, kind of like, let's surround Daniel with weapons and maybe he'll that kind of thing. So it seems like sort of like a desperate move. It almost seems like, Jesus, we didn't get to one of our top 3 guys. Let's just surround Daniel with an offensive line, give him some wide receivers, tight end, and maybe he'll surprise us again. The alternative is, I don't know what their alternative was, because signing Drew Lock obviously doesn't seem to have been well thought through. So this is the problem Shane has. We talked about why Daboll's got these problems. Shane's has these problems because I don't see what the plan was here. It seems like they've been flip-flopping. Again, the Barkley thing seems flip-flop. The Daniel Jones thing seems flip-flop. We've talked about Barkley, about how they should have traded him in 2022, 2023. We haven't spent enough time on Xavier McKinney. Xavier wanted a new contract last year with the Giants. The Giants going into the season said, no, we're not going to talk to you once the season starts. So they knew he was going to hit free agency. And then they had a horrible first half last year up until the trade deadline. They should have traded him at the trade deadline last year. Sure. And then he walked. And so it's not just Saquon. We've talked about Saquon, but Xavier's in the same category. And to a minor's extent, they apparently had, and it might have been crappy offers, but they had offers for Azeez Ojulari, who, as we predicted, ended up in injured reserve again. Yep. Trade him for a 7th rounder. I don't care. Just get rid of him. And now they're going to get nothing for him. And Darius Slayton, the same thing.
And I think Mara's words about I think this was last year. We don't want to just trade guys at the deadline and make it look like we're just giving up on the season.
But they did, though. But they have.
And the funny thing is like that's exactly what you're doing right now.
Yes.
If you believe the soft tank, and I do think at this point they're not trying super hard to I don't think they're game planning specific anymore to the opponent. I think they're just game planning like we'll run this on 3rd downs. We'll do this. And I think they're keeping it lot more vanilla. Quite frankly, I don't think it matters. Even when we weren't doing that, what difference does it make that the quarterback doesn't matter? I just don't really see. I hate to say this because I used to think it's the boogeyman, but I do think there's a Mara issue in part of this. And it is the thought process that he didn't interfere in the Barkley thing, but we knew how he felt about it. I do think he interfered on the Jones side of things I've said this over and over again. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think he interfered on the Jones side of things to make sure that they could franchise Barkley, because Barkley was not going to take the contract that they were offering. The only way you get Barkley is to give him the money that he wants, but then you don't give that to your quarterback. Now, you shared the thing that Art Stapleton shared. And if anybody didn't see it, go back and look at the post in the thing. But basically,
Art, what the hell was that tweet?
Basically, what he shared, and I'm paraphrasing, but correct me if I'm wrong here, is he was basically talking about you can't really get rid of these guys. You forget that they was coach of the year in 22, that he had a bad roster. You got to give them a chance to have their own quarterback and make it their own because if you do this, if you get rid of them, you might not be able to get another coach because you tell them they've got 2 years and then they're probably out.
His argument was what you just said, but it was basically you can't fire a historically bad GM and coach because you would send a bad message to the rest of the league on coaches that you might be interested in. So, in other words, stick with the crap that you have already, because heaven forbid you send out a bad message. I mean, to me, that's like, I mean, say you had a failing stock. I mean, say you had, it's almost like to hold on to something because you don't want to send out a message that you made a bad investment in the first place. Well, you don't hold on to something that's not working, because guess what? If they're horrible at their job, they're going to get fired at some point, and then you've lost another year. We have lost more than a decade of football here. This is really bad. We had a good season in 2016, and we had a decent season in 2022. But besides those 2 years, the rest of the decade, we've been in third and fourth place in like 6 and 10. You know, five and
That'd be a
11.
good year. That'd be a good year.
I mean, it's just terrible. 4-win seasons. I mean, just terrible. And this is. I mean, I couldn't believe he tweeted that out. That to me, that was an absurd. His rationale was, you can't send a bad message. You better keep the crappy guys you have. Of course, and the other thing he said, the other element of what he said was, you got to give them a chance to pick their quarterback. Well, they did pick their quarterback. They picked Daniel Jones. They were going to get rid of him. They decided not to. They decided to give him $160 million. They both signed off on that. That was their quarterback. They picked that. They've caused this mess. For you to act like they haven't picked a quarterback is absurd.
He made it even worse, because he did post later in response to someone else that the Giants had no choice. These guys he goes, they had no choice, but after coming off a playoff season, you can't get rid of your quarterback. There's a difference between not getting rid of the guy and franchising him for the 1 year while you still try to figure out my roster, what I'm doing, than giving him what at the time was a fairly significant quarterback contract. The numbers inflated when you do the whole thing, the adjusted value part. But the one that was mocked across the landscape of the NFL, former players, other commentators mocked this particular thing. And I think some of those things are kind of generated more for just creating stuff. But to be honest, they were all looking at it going, you paid him and you didn't pay Barkley. Doesn't matter what we think about whether Barkley should have got money. It matters to other players, though, that the more important of the two players that they felt for the team, you gave one a ton. You gave the other guy basically.
That's not us opining. They said it publicly. Kayvon Thibodeau came out and publicly said that. Yep. And the other thing, and I sorry to interrupt, but there are other teams out there that part ways with players that are a reason for their success, but they said it's time to move on. Like, look, Tyreek Hill with the Chiefs, but you can pick quarterbacks too, where teams have said, no, he's not going to. The thing is, and you and I have talked about this over and over again. Yes, the Giants got into the playoffs in 2022, but it wasn't really a great season. It was sort of a Band-Aid approach.
Sure.
To get into
smoke and mirrors and a lot of it, yeah.
And they basically had to dumb down the offense for Daniel Jones. They had their hands on it, and they knew what he could and couldn't do. The Philadelphia Eagles knew everyone likes to talk about the Vikings game, and you and I have talked about this over and over again. But look what Daniel did against the Philadelphia Eagles in that playoff game. After that, he got crushed because the Eagles knew how to defend Daniel Jones.
Sure,
he's not a good quarterback. And other people, Giants fans, have said this, that they could not walk away from Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. I don't get that mindset at all. That's a New York Giant fan mindset that somehow a lot of our fans have incorporated that from our ownership for some reason. And that's a loser mentality.
Oh yeah,
you can get rid of players. And again, the Eagles are a great example of this. They know when to get rid of players. The Eagles know when to get rid of players before they're become an issue. And we don't. We hang on to players, and we hang on to coaches, and we hang on to GMs too long. That's the history of, and that's where this loyalty criticism comes from with Giants fans. With the Maras are too loyal, because we all have seen it over, and this goes back to Wellington too. The loyalty is a tremendous asset, but it can also be a detriment if you're too loyal to somebody. And there was no reason to hold on to Daniel Jones if you don't think he could. He's not a $160 million quarterback. He just isn't.
No.
And the people that mocked the Giants at the time were right. They were right for mocking him. I mean, it was a terrible contract, and it set them up for this whole thing. I'm sorry, I had to get that.
No, you're fine. Well, that's where we're at, though, right? Like, so if you can bandy about anything you want about should they, shouldn't they, should they, shouldn't they. The fact of the matter is this: there is a series of decisions that have been made that continually seem to be either very short-sighted or just really wrong. One of the two. They thought they were 1 minute we don't do the 5th-year option. Okay, that means you have huge question marks about this guy, and you're just gonna, make it through year number 4. We'll see what he does. 15 touchdowns through the air, 7 on the ground, and you go, he's worth $40 million a year. Those are middling range quarterback numbers, by the way. The rushing touchdowns are a little bit higher, but the passing touchdowns are low. That was one of his best years since his rookie year, was 15. So you then make a decision that's the exact opposite of the way you first came in, the way you thought you were going. So then you stop the rebuild, if that's what you want to call it. And now we're going to retool. We're going to add some more. We're going to add some weapons, and we're going to move forward. But by doing what you did where you were starting to get ahead on the cap, we then went backwards on the cap. Yeah. By the way, we're still not good.
No, we're not. And people who keep saying that, you're wrong. Stop saying the Giants are in great cap shape. If you look at their cap picture vis-a-vis the rest of the league, we're all right, but it's not like great. It's not. And as John keeps pointing out, we've got a huge quarterback void right now. And the roster is going to have to be filled up because a lot of the guys we have are dregs. So that cap space is going to disappear really, really rapidly.
People are giving too much like, oh, well, we got all this space next year. We have space because you just cut a guy. But it's dead money. And again, I don't care about dead money. I never have.
I know you don't, but I do.
The only reason I don't care about it is because it doesn't affect how much money I have to spend. Whatever I have to spend is what I have to spend. It doesn't matter that 50 million of it is dead money. It just means that here's my space. That's all I care about. What do we have for space? Why are we always kind of on space? We don't have great players. We're great players.
Because they don't know how to evaluate talent. And John C. has talked about this for over and over again, and they're not good at evaluating talent. You said something interesting. They've made a lot of wrong decisions. What decisions have they made that have been right? And if they don't, and if they haven't, they don't, then why are you bringing them back? They're not making the right decisions. I just have this strong feeling. So here I'm going. I'm going to get rid of this old reticent Eric that won't speak his mind all the time. I'm going to tell you right now, if we roll these guys back, we're going to fire them in the following year, and then we're going to be like, damn it, here we go. We wasted another year again. I wanted these guys to work out. They were given a chance to be a breath of fresh air. Their first year was great. But they've botched they botched everything since. They have gotten nothing right the last. And the other thing too is one thing that you said that reminded me of something again that you and I have talked about over and over again. So if you weren't completely sure on Jones when his contract was up, again, remember they passed on the 5th-year option, so they decided they had one look at him when they came in and said, no, we're not. Daniel Jones isn't the future. We're not going to give him the 5th year off. Then they barely make the playoffs, and they get an upset in the first round, and they get crushed in the next round. And all of a sudden they say, well, maybe Jones is going to be the guy. And instead of just franchising him and letting Barkley walk, they gave him a huge contract and franchised Barkley. But then what do they do? The very following year, they let Barkley walk anyways. And based on the comments that we saw in Hard Knocks, I got the strong impression that Joe Schoen was never really all that high on Barkley, because I don't think the comments he made in that were just a spur of the moment 1 year overview of Barkley. I think in the back of Shane's mind, he bought into this running back shouldn't be getting premier money, whether you agree with that or not, but that was his position. So if he felt that way, again, and he felt there was even an inkling in his head that they were going to let Barkley walk the following offseason. Why would you give Jones the contract? Why wouldn't you just do it a year early and let Barkley go a year early, and then instead of taking a huge gamble on Jones, which they did, just franchise Jones one more year? And then you would, because if they had franchised Jones one more year, they wouldn't have re-signed him, and we wouldn't be in this mess.
Right.
We wouldn't have, and I bet you we would have drafted a quarterback.
It's interesting, all the things that come back from that point in time. So circle back. You made the comment, one big decision can. I said a bunch of other decisions have to make the one really stand out. The problem is the one is the domino piece to all the other decisions. Everything you did after that point has been almost the opposite. And it's the whack-a-mole approach that John C. brings up, but we do it too late. You signed Jones, you franchised Barkley. Then we should have gone out right away and tried to get a playmaker, a big-time playmaker, to put at wide receiver. So you would have had your trio. We would have had the three amigos, essentially. The Cowboys had it when they got Aikman, Smith, and they had Irvin, but then they also had Alvin Harper. They also had Jay Novacek. The Giants basically wheeled out their receiving core. And what did we get? We had diminutive Wan'Dale Robinson, from the previous draft. Then you went and traded up and got Jalen Hyatt. These are not guys that you were going to say they're taking over. You still had Slayton. We were hoping Hodgins would go. I mean, you didn't go get that big time player. So instead you went, we got Jones signed and we got Barkley franchise. We'll go get Deonte Banks. Now our defense is going to be better. You played this like we just were a wild card team that kind of got lucky to get in, which we were. You played this like we're a wild card team. We were like the 84 Giants going into 85 with a dominant D line, and we're going to add a few pieces, and now we're going to go, and then 85 and 86. This team was not ready to go anywhere. But you played it like it was, and it burned you. And then you doubled down on it, though, again in this year. You didn't get the quarterback, even though you knew you didn't like the guy you got. That's your fault. You signed him, but you didn't like him. You made it very obvious that you wanted one of those other guys. Notice that they never showed Brian Daboll talking about players on his team. They never asked him about like, hey, what do you think we can roll into the season with?
There was none of that in Hard Knocks.
It was only Joe Schoen talking about allowing him to be the bad guy, I guess. But I also wonder, there's been all the rumors that Daboll might have been far more pro Barkley and less pro Jones. And that's why you don't know a lot of that stuff. But regardless, Shane talked about Jones. Shane talked about how we kind of need to know, and we need a quarterback. And that's why they were looking at May. They were looking at Daniels. You hear Daboll talking about the rookies, not about anybody on his team. They made every decision at that point, though, to support the decision they made to sign him, except for the fact that they did it later. 23 gets blown up. Jones gets hurt. So what do? We roll it back out. Now we go get the playmaker. What evidence did you have from the 23 season that said to you, Daniel Jones not only is going to be the guy that he's going to be better than the 22 version?
Well, not only that, but you have the humongous injury risk now.
Yes.
Huge injury risk. 2 neck injuries and an ACL.
And we thought he would be better than 22 if you gave him a wide receiver.
And he's a running quarterback, too.
It's always too late. It's always after the fact that we do things.
People who say, again, you can't do these things. Do you think if the Giants had Carson Wentz and they had the kind of playoff success the Eagles had with Carson Wentz, they would have parted ways with Carson Wentz? No, I don't think the Giants would have done that. I think the Eagles said he's not good, and they got rid of him.
I just think it's hysterical that you said that, because when you were talking before about holding on too long and other teams, my first thought was the Philadelphia Eagles had Carson Wentz had more success his rookie year than Daniel Jones had. He took a knee injury, and that's the only reason that Foles got on the field. So,
and they said, we don't want that anymore.
Yeah. 1 year later, they were like, nah, this is not.
Mara and whoever the GM Gettleman or whoever would have said, no, we got to hold on to this guy, give him another year. And you've seen what's happening with Wentz's career. They were right. The Eagles were right. So we held on to Daniel Jones too long. And all right, so we can keep going because I want to talk about a couple other things too, because there's so there's so much to talk about. But I just think there have been so many bad decisions made, and you have to ask, what have they done right?
Right.
And what you said earlier again, one other thing that you said about Mara has said, well, or the Giants have felt you can't trade away assets, or you're sending the wrong message that you've given up on the season. Well, they did that with Leonard Williams. So
Yeah, it didn't bother us then.
The same year you did Leonard Williams, why didn't you do other players? We all thought it wasn't going to be just Leonard Williams. If people remember on the website, we thought Leonard Williams was going to be the first one, and there were going to be others. Because why would you only just because you are sending a message to the lot. You are sending a message, but the season was over. Like so many of our seasons it was over by Halloween, and he was going to be a free agent, and they got a good return for somebody who was going to be a free. They got a second round pick for him, and I think they got a lower round pick in addition to that. But everybody was thrilled at the time with Art, because we thought we were not going to re-sign him, and we better get something. And we thought, well, they're going to do this with other players, and I thought they'd do it with Barkley. I thought that's when they were going to ship Barkley, and I thought we'd do. If we could go back in time and say, sell the assets that you had, get a bunch of draft picks, and rebuild this thing, get the salary cap in order to rebuild this, I guarantee you Shane would redo that. If Shane could go back in time and redo this,
oh, sure,
he would have done that.
And some of the stuff, it's hard. Some of the stuff just hasn't worked out. You made a valid point. You had a valid point back then that you're drafting Neal, which is really high to be a right tackle. But to clarify, because we have talked about this, it wasn't that Neal was the risk per se. It's the position. Neal was at the top of the order of tackles that you were going, but you were getting him to play the right side of the offensive line, which is a high pick to do that.
And most teams who would have drafted him would have played him at left tackle.
Right.
They would have played him at left tackle. We had a left tackle. So that my argument at the time was, if we didn't have Andrew Thomas, drafting Neal would have made sense because he's a left tackle. My problem was, you don't draft a right tackle. You can get a good right tackle in the second round. Why would you draft one in the first round? And now, lo and behold, this guy can't even play right tackle. So it would have been. Can you imagine Evan Neal at left tackle? Holy crap! So
yeah.
So
well, and the thing that's cost us the most, though, we're giving Joe Schoen a lot of credit for the 24 draft. I mean, we're not really saying it now, but over the series of podcasts, we've done that. And other people are constantly like, look at his draft choices.
Well,
that's another. And a lot of other people are saying, oh, that's why to bring him back. But one of the reasons you have a salary cap problem that you do have is that you keep drafting guys that hopefully will be middle of the pack players on your roster that eat up space at a very cheap cost and can contribute 2, 3, 4 years, hopefully, before we have to, they might never be starters, but they're contributors. But if they are starters, they're like the McFadden's. The problem is you get like a third round Josh Azudu and you decide you're going to play him a tackle, and he can't be a tackle. I've really hardly ever seen him play guard. So this guy is basically on there, but he's not. You're having to constantly sign free agents at the position he was drafted at. You got McKeithen, he gets hurt, he's not even on the team. So you've missed a lot. Or your guys just haven't been good enough that they're back end roster pieces that you have to go get free agents, keep bringing them in. Van Roten, we go get Runyon, you've had to bring in a Luminor. So basically almost our entire offensive line is made up of guys that you've had to pull in from elsewhere because the draft guys just can't seem to play and develop.
They all 4 offensive linemen they've drafted have not panned out, so they had to go into free agency and try to fix something because they couldn't draft offensive linemen. So the argument for keeping Shane right now is something that I mentioned in my game preview. Is where I know Mara's thinking this, and I would too, is when Shane came in, to his credit, now it hasn't worked out, to his credit, he got rid of a lot of people in the front office. He got a lot of, and he hired people, and he brought in outside voices, and a lot of us cheered it at the time. Again, 22, we were coming off 2022. And they the first when he first got there, they couldn't, because they were already, the old scouts and stuff were still scouting during the college football season before Shane was even a Giant. So when that draft's over, that's when a bunch of people got fired and he started bringing people in, and that continued this past off season too. So Mara's sitting back going, Shane has restructured this entire front office, and if I get rid of him, everything he's built up for the last 3 years goes out the window. Now, you and I as fan and all our fans are out there are going, so what? They suck, get rid of them. But as an owner, someone who controls the organization, you're thinking, think of it like if you own a company and you hired somebody and they redid everything and they brought in this whole new structure and you spent all this money on it, you would be really, really wary of blowing it all up again, because the next guy who comes in may say, I don't like any of this and I don't like these people. I'm going to get rid of all of them. So
Right.
again, us fans will say that, yeah, that's fine, do it. But when you own the team, that's a hard decision. And I guarantee you that's kind of where Mara's thinking right now too, is, do I want to fire all these people again and start from scratch? And I think that and again, I just throw that out there because there's more to it than just saying fire this guy, fire that guy, that type of thing. There's a whole structure and organization in place that's been built up, and when you do that, the chaos as a result. You and I will argue that's a good thing right now because what we have isn't working, but Mara's got a bigger picture than that, than you and I.
You could argue that George Young was in a similar position. He hires Ray Perkins. They struggle early on. They had drafted Phil Simms. He gets injured a lot. They struggle. They get LT. They make the playoffs. 81 playoffs with the Giants is not drastically different than the 2022 Giants. The difference was it's a different league in a different era at that time. You had players where there wasn't going to be a lot of movement. Even if your players' contracts were up, they weren't signing with anybody else. They were stuck with you unless you literally unless you cut them.
With your team,
yeah, unless you cut them, you had the rights to them. So, but that team fell off in 82 and Perkins leaves. So the difference being they made the playoffs with Perkins 2 years later. Daboll makes it right off. They fall off the cliff immediately the next year. The Giants of 81 fell down in 82. There was a strike. We fell off the cliff in 83 with the new coach and Parcells. But Young got two coaches before they had real success. He had Perkins, then he had Parcells. If Mara, and if you look across, when's the last time we had a GM that we fired after with the coach that they hired? We didn't. They always stay. They get a second coach.
Right.
I have a feeling that's where this is going to go. The problem is I think they're trying everything possible to figure out how to keep Daboll too, and I just don't see why. I don't really want to keep Shane, but I also get the fact of blowing it up with him. It's complicated because then you do have to find, and there are going to be other teams looking for GMs right now. You got to find a GM that's going to want to come in. They're going to want their coach. That coach has got to want to come here, which I don't know right now if this is the most attractive spot, but the first pick in the draft does appeal to some people. I think Daboll's going to get fired. I think Shane's coming back. But John Mara, if I were you, one, you need to keep your family part of this a little bit out of the decision making from now on. You muddy the waters. You embarrass yourself. Chris Mara being involved in stuff looks like he's going in there to go, what's going on? So he can go back and go tell, big brother, big uncle, whatever the hell the relationship is between those two, all the information. It looks stupid. Chris Mara has no business being involved in that stuff other than the fact that his last name is Mara. No different than when you say, Cy said Sanders is only considered the number one pick in the draft because his name is Sanders. If he wasn't, he probably wouldn't be looked at as easily. That's the only reason Chris Mara is where he's at. And then McDonald's the same thing. He's been around forever, by the way. We've had no success with these guys being involved. Why are they not under scrutiny too? So if you want to make changes, if you're going to let Shane run, Shane's going to cook the things, he's got to do it, then the leash or the sit on your shoulder, the Jiminy Cricket, I'm right here telling you what's going to happen or not happen, needs to go away, and you got to let him. He either has to sink or swim on his own.
I want to turn to I want to go on comment on what you said, but we should turn to, because I don't want this to go on way long.
Yeah.
But I'd like to talk about the quarterbacks, and I'd like to talk about the next head coach. What you just said about McDonald and Mara, being still involved in the personnel is very disconcerting. And I'm starting to really wonder if you've talked about the organizational arrogance before. I'm starting to wonder, and again, I'm going to probably regret saying this because, and we can talk about this too, whether the Giants really are putting pressure on other podcasters and stuff out there or not. They haven't done it with us. They have not reached out to John and I and say, you better get told. Of course, we don't have the viewers yet. So maybe they're not worried about us. I'm starting to worry if they're just not that smart. That the people that the people at the top of this organization are, I think that I know this. They have good intentions. They actually want to win. When they see fans on our site suffering in terms of like a family tragedy, a death in the family, something like that, they will reach out and they don't advertise it. They don't look for credit. They don't look for PR on it. They really care about their fans. But I wonder sometimes if they're just not very bright. And I worry about that at the top of the organization, because some of the stuff, like, again, what does John Mara's got to look around and go, what are we doing wrong? What are the things that are staying the same and what's changing? And at some point you'd think he would look at his family and go, and himself, and go, we're the problem. We're the problem. Something we're doing isn't working here, but they don't seem to be doing that. Again, if I'm at home and I try to fix something and I keep botching it over and over again, I'm going to hire a professional to come in here and fix it for me.
Right.
I'm not going to keep, I've made the analogy before. If I have a leaky pipe and I'm flooding my house, I'm going to hire a plumber to come in here and fix it because I can't fix it. But John the plumber keeps trying to, and his house is flooding. And it keeps getting worse and worse. And now it's the water's past the basement and coming to the first floor, and he still won't hire the plumber. So that to me is just disconcerting in itself, because five coaches in the last less than a decade now. We're talking about 5 coaches, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about quarterbacks quick, and I want to talk about coaches. Nothing we do is quick, but I want to talk about coaches and quarterbacks, because I think before you do that, I want to ask you one thing.
Yeah. Have you ever dealt with anybody who you would consider an insecure narcissist?
Not personally, but I recognize them when I see them in public.
So
in other words, I don't have anyone in my life that's like
I will be very careful how I say these next things, because it could cost me a significant amount of money. Yeah. I have had a lot of experience over the last X number of years of dealing with what I would consider an insecure narcissist. Okay. And the reason I say that is it's a person that takes a lot of pride in their particular thing, whether I'll be too specific if I say what it is. So let's just say it's their widget, right? They take a lot of pride in their widget.
I'm getting more enjoyment trying to watch you dance around.
I'm telling you. But the problem with the widget is they know there's problems with the widget, but they're okay with the widget the way that it is because it's theirs. They'll actually bring other people in to work on the widget, but then they'll make them do the work the way they want it done.
Oh, I see where,
versus hiring these people to come in and make the widget better. Right. It's, I'm going to teach you how you're going to learn my way. Yeah. And then when things happen, if things are said or whatever, like you get it, like if suggestions are, well, the widget would be better if you did this, you actually insulted them, you hurt their feelings, and they get very defensive about it. They believe that it's their way is the right way and it's the only way. They seek out advice sometimes, not because I'm looking for your advice, but then I want to explain to you why your advice is wrong.
I understand. Yeah.
That's what I see here.
Yeah.
And one thing that you said, and we'll drop it because I don't want to make this longer, but I want to go back to what you said a number of shows ago. What were you most concerned about? You were concerned that Hard Knocks will be a confirmation bias for John Mara, that his opinion, his worry about Saquon was right. And even though technically it is from the Eagles side of the equation, keeping him on the Giants actually would not have been the right thing to do.
And Cy said the same thing in terms of that, Mara and both Maras ended up being right about what's our identity.
What's
and
our identity? Right.
And that's the thing. But Cy was not saying, from my point of view, that it's going to reinforce bad behavior. He was saying they ended up being right. So yes. Well, how could they not take that lesson?
And if that's the case, then you're going to see them meddle.
Yes.
We need a guy who thinks like we think versus going, that was right from one perspective. Not from the perspective of the Giants, because you're not really evaluating yourself. You just confirmed that you were correct in your thought.
Well, what concerned me about the picture behind you now, when I saw it on the telecast, was him turning around and who's standing right behind him.
Well, Chris Mara's off to the side. That's McDonald walking across.
Right. But who's there in the booth right next to him? Like, who's he? So when you're in a dark place and you're looking to bitch and you're looking to
right.
Who do you turn to? And look at who he's got next to him. And the narrative is, whether this is true or not, the narrative was when Coughlin was in thin ice, that Mara made him get rid of his coordinators, the original coordinators, and replace them with Gilbride and, was it first Spags that came, or was there a guy before Spags? Whatever. They had to.
Spags came second.
I'm trying to remember who. Did he come third or second?
I think he was second.
Coughlin's first offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator were fired. And the narrative was that Mara forced them out. So is Mara saying now, Shane, I'm going to keep you, but you're going to be on a shorter leash right now, and Chris and Tim are going to have more say in this. So,
right. Well, and then the coach thing, right? We hear behind the scenes that there were some people in the organization, McDonald's supposedly one of them, that was very pro Brian Flores, not Daboll, and that Shane wanted Daboll being his guy.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know.
I know that's the rumor though.
Yeah.
And clearly, and the way that blew up too afterwards, by the way, that was McDonald's fault. Your damn text should not have been able to get out like you did.
That's my only exposure to his ability is like idiot. That was not a good look for him. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's fine. So you're absolutely right. Well, here's the other thing about this picture behind me. The Giants say that they didn't have the suite available like they did in other places, and that's why some of the front office staff was down on the sidelines where we never see them usually. Well, there's Mara, there's McDonald, Chris Mara's in there.
Yeah, there's room in there.
I see a lot of space over there.
There's a lot of bread. There's a lot of space.
No one's sitting down. I think you can walk around. I'm pretty sure. I have a feeling there were people down on the sidelines. They were there because you didn't have room in the suite. They were there to hear the interaction with the players, to gather data, to gather information about how things are going with Daboll on the sidelines. What's the feeling of the players? What's the thought on the look at Brown going up to Tommy DeVito, who's flipping open the play chart as a play is obviously being called in. Brown is standing right there between him and Boyle, listening to what's going on and talking. Yep. Are we extrapolating? Am I extrapolating? I saw that and it means this. Yes. Am I right? I don't know. But it sure is the weirdest optics I've ever seen for the Giants.
Oh, and that answer was bullshit. Yeah. Now that you say, look at all the room behind it. So unless we're getting to the thing like you were talking before, they don't want to draft a black quarterback, and maybe they don't want to have a black assistant GM in the suite with them. I don't know.
Well, where's Shane? Where's Shane?
Yeah.
He wasn't seen in those pictures, and I don't remember seeing him on the sidelines.
I think
he might have been, but I didn't see him.
Did you see the Atlanta Falcon cheerleaders? He might have had the binoculars looking at the cheerleaders.
Yeah, they were really dressed. I don't know. They were like full pants and everything. I don't know.
The whole thing's a mess. The whole thing's and before we move on, the big picture to me is when they were 2-5, 2-4, 2-6, it was easy to say they're coming back. When they're 2-13. And you see looks like you behind you, and they're like, that's why I don't think they're tanking.
No,
that doesn't look like a man to me who's just sort of like
the expected outcome
with this.
Yeah.
If anything, he would be kind of celebrating a little bit. Yeah. It was funny getting on BBI when the first pick six was thrown, because we were winning the game at that point. And I went on BBI when the pick six was thrown. It was like people were going, "Oh, thank God, there's Drew Lock. We know." I mean, this is the bizarro world we live now.
You would have thought David Tyree just did the helmet catch all over again.
I mean, this is just so sad. So what the nice discussion that this turns into is kind of what Cy talked about too. Is this? So if you bring back Shane and Daboll's gone, let's assume that that's at least going to happen. If that doesn't happen, if they bring back Daboll, I'm gonna be like Michael Scott in The Office. No, when Toby's back. No.
Dear God, no.
No.
Yeah. I mean, how do you sell that to your players?
If Shane's coming back, they've got to hire a coach who has a vision for what this team is going to be. And that's why, as Cy talked about and others have talked about, and I don't think they're going to get him because it's too perfect a fit, is Vrabel. If you bring in Vrabel, you know you're going to get a tough, again, I don't want to use the STD, smart, tough. You know you're going to get.
You're burning and itching to do it. You know.
Yes, you're going. But he's got a history of you know what you're going to get with him. He's again, he isn't going to take his team to a Super Bowl, but there's an identity to those Titan teams. Right. So you've got to get somebody who, and if it's not him, it's got to be somebody you bring in and you interview and say, we're not just trying to bring in players and willy-nilly and just go from there. What do you want to do on defense? What's your vision for defense? What's your vision for offense? This is crazy. We've fired 5 coaches. We don't want to do this anymore. We need a long-term plan in place. How are you going to build this? And that's what they need. They cannot get some weak-kneed, indecisive guy in here. They've got to have somebody who's going to come in here with a really, really, really strong personality and says, a little bit of a narcissist in a way, but we want a good narcissist in here that says, God damn it, we're going to do it my way or the highway, and this is what I'm going to be about. And no, Joe Schoen, I don't want this guy. I don't want to draft this guy. He's not my kind of player. He doesn't fit my scheme, and I can't use him. I don't want this guy. So that's the kind of guy that we need in here. So I'm curious what you think. So what are you looking at with the coaches on the market right now? I know you like Vrabel. I know you like Vrabel. But if it's not Vrabel, let's say Vrabel says, Christ, I don't want to deal with this mess. And he may well do that. I'm hoping he doesn't. I'm hoping they get him. And again, I'm not saying Vrabel's the next Parcells or Coughlin here. I'm just trying to steady the ship at this point.
But then again, keep in mind, Parcells wasn't Parcells until he became the coach of the Giants. We didn't know that. And Coughlin was a good coach elsewhere that got his team to a point and couldn't get him beyond that. That's Vrabel in a nutshell.
Right.
I don't want to relive the past per se, but there are pieces of the past that you learn from and say, and after you've done so many things a different way, you kind of need that piece. So answer your question. Obviously Vrabel. I'm not sure he's the guy. I kind of have a weird feeling he's going to end up in New England. Because I think Mayo's going to get fired.
Didn't Ben Johnson say he's interested in Chicago this week?
I don't know. I don't know he'd be allowed to say that.
Okay.
Because I mean, you can't really. You're coaching another team. You can't
I thought I saw something on that, but maybe.
And it may be. I don't know. It seems weird that usually you don't mention other teams by name. This is. I've gone back and forth on this one and recently come around to it. If I'm going from a tree of they've had experience, then after Vrabel, my next choice is Arthur Smith.
Right.
I think Arthur
mentioned before.
Yeah, I think he got kind of a bad rap in Atlanta. They were kind of hamstrung at quarterback, and quite frankly, look at the Falcons now, right? Like you replace them, you bring in a new head coach, a new general manager, all that good stuff. You spend a shit ton of money on a guy coming off an Achilles injury. And then you draft the quarterback who's now already had to replace the dude. So you are going to have to cut him in the offseason. But for all the talent that they have, the Falcons can't seem to win. And they're in a shitty division, and they're still fighting to win it. You've got Kyle Pitts, who's, I mean, they should have beat us by more. Kyle Pitts has a ball that he juggles and just tosses it up for Cordell Flott to intercept. You've got Bijan Robinson, sure, but you haven't done much on the defensive side of the ball. That's where you've been gouged lots of times. So I'm not buying it. I think Arthur Smith got a raw deal. Look what he's done with Pittsburgh. You've basically got reclamation projects with both Wilson and Fields.
Right.
That team is playing better than they should, because I don't think either one of those guys is anywhere near as good. Fields has never really developed, and Wilson's on the backside. I mean, you're a shorter, smaller quarterback, and your skills are starting to diminish. Those are two things that are hard to overcome. Physical stature is one thing, but when your skills start to diminish, it becomes glaringly more obvious. I think he's okay. I think he can get by for another year or two, but Smith is making salad out of shit, is basically where we're at.
And then the Cy was talking about going in the other coaching tree direction instead of going with the Patriots coaching tree, which hasn't worked out around the league, historically speaking, going with the 49er coaching tree,
right?
Shanahan coaching tree.
And Liam Cohen with the Buccaneers. The problem I have with that, though, is I actually think that he's totally right. That tree has spawned a lot of
good coaches. Yeah.
But you nailed it a few minutes ago. If you go that route, your drafting has to match exactly what they want. And if you're not going to do that, which I don't think Shane and Daboll have been on the same page about who they've decided to go and get. I think Neighbors
they look like they are in Hard Knocks. Again, I know that's edited, but they look like they're on the same page.
But beyond that,
came out of Buffalo, and I mean, I never got the sense that Shane wasn't. I mean, we know Daboll wanted Malik Neighbors.
So you've got Jones, who's not a deep ball passer.
Right.
You go get a speedster to be a deep.
Yeah, where's the
he never gets on
Hyatt? The same thing with Hyatt.
That's what I'm talking about. He never gets on the field.
On Hyatt. I know a lot of people have given up on Hyatt, but that's why I haven't given up on Hyatt still.
I think you're in the minority of those, because I'm in the other side.
Oh, I know I am. I'm in a tiny minority with
Hyatt. They should
that
give
draft right now looks terrible with Banks, who again he's miscast defense now. But then you've got Hyatt, and then you've got who am I forgetting? The second round pick.
Schmitz.
That draft looks terrible right now.
Well, Hyatt, to me, my problem with Hyatt, it's all optics now. And it goes back to that video of him talking to the Dallas Cowboy receiver coach.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know.
And he's like, well, what kind of receiver am I? No, what kind? What kind? Very arrogantly. Well, guess what? That coach is right. You are a one-trick pony unless you learn other stuff, and you can't even do that for us. You don't beat people off the line. You're not physical, and you don't get set when you're supposed to.
Yeah, and I don't think he's ever going to be a physical receiver, but I think there is it's like Colin was talking about. There is a way to use him, and they're not using him in that way. And now, again, they don't have the quarterbacks to get him the ball. So again, he's one of those guys, and I know I'm way out on the limb. He's one of those guys that if we let go of him, I would not be shocked if he does well someplace else.
So with what you were saying, right? So let's say you go Liam Cohen. You need to get him a quarterback that can improvise, that is quick on his feet. Baker Mayfield's not a great quarterback, but he does make quick decisions overall. He has a pretty good arm. He's got a lot of I hate to use the word because now you're going to be like, get off my yard kind of thing. He's got a lot of moxie. You know what I mean? And you can make plays with him. If you look at the way the Lions did stuff, right? So you bring in Dan Campbell, he's a gambler, he's aggressive, whatever. They go and get Jared Goff, #1 draft pick from the Rams, but a guy who didn't live up to what they felt they should have. That's why the Rams wanted to move on. That's why they switched quarterbacks. But you put him in a spot where you go, we're going to be a multifaceted big play team. We will be fast. He's got a gun. I want to attack people down the field. I'm okay if he throws a few interceptions. I'm okay if he's not a runner. We're going to make up for that with a lot of other stuff. Great. But look at the Giants. We had a guy who's not a great passer. He could run, but that run is not, he's not a Lamar Jackson runner.
He wasn't creative.
He's not a Lamar Jackson runner. He's just fast for his size when he gets going. So you have to design everything around him, and Daboll did for about 9 games. He was able to do it in 22, and then 2 games specifically, the Colts game, the Vikings playoff game. That is pretty much where Jones topped out.
Do you see the risk, though? Do you see the risk here is that if you keep Daboll and you draft Sanders or Ward, and then Daboll gets fired then the following year, and then you hire a new coach, he gets stuck with the quarterback he didn't draft. Or
Oh,
the ownership
big
is
time.
forced to only bring in somebody who will accept that guy as their quarterback. This is the same goddamn mess we've been in for a while now. That we've hired people like even Joe Judge fell into this, and Shermer, right? Was it Shermer? Who was the coach when
Well, Shermer was with we got Barkley, and then they went and got Jones.
It's Daboll. I'm sorry. So it was Daboll and Judge both had to accept. They both had to accept Daniel Jones as the quarterback when they came in here. I don't want to do that again. That's kind of why I want a new.
Well, even McAdoo, he was stuck with Eli, even though he wanted Mahomes.
Yes.
He wanted him to go get Mahomes, and they were like,
We'll
get Evan Ingram.
Talk about one of those pivots in franchise history right there. Imagine if the Giants had drafted Mahomes. So,
well, I mean, think about it for not only pivot in Giants history, but what about other? Let's take the Giants organization out of it. And I don't want to drag too long, but let's take the individuals, right? Where would Ben McAdoo be right now? He started off that first year. They were what? We were 12-4, 13-3. I think we were 13-3. We am I right about that? 12-4, 11. What doesn't matter. We made the playoffs. We won the division.
This last decade to me is a blur.
We won the division. We made the playoffs and we won the division. We played the Packers. We lost a shitty game because Odell Beckham couldn't catch the ball and none of the receivers after their little boat trip could do anything. He comes into the offseason and he's like, I want Mahomes. That guy is going to be the guy. Where would he be had they gone that route? Instead, they forced Eli through, and then they kind of wanted to get away from him. And with their backup was Geno Smith, but the optics were so bad. It was handled so poorly that it fell apart. And Mara basically, Reese got fired for that decision and McAdoo got fired. The team was going down anyway, but it was racked with injuries too, by the way. Let's not forget that. So Daboll doesn't get a pass on injuries. Nobody else did. You then get Shermer and you still have Eli. And then you go, we're going to get the running back who's been touched by the hand of God, even though you could have done other stuff, forcing that quarterback on the coach one more year. Then you forced yourself into a quarterback pick, which is where we are right now.
Right.
My problem with what you said is this. If you draft Sanders, if we're going to look at this from an individual standpoint, you draft Sanders, the coach gets fired. He obviously didn't do well during the season if he gets fired. Right? So if Daboll gets fired, the Giants obviously didn't do well.
And let's be honest, a lot of rookie quarterbacks like Drake May are on losing teams.
Right, and they struggle, right?
And they struggle.
And May didn't even start, by the way. Jacoby Brissett did.
That's a normal thing even for an elite guy. I mean, it's not the Jaden Daniels types don't normally. That doesn't normally happen.
How many games did Mahomes start his rookie year?
He didn't start, right? He didn't.
One game.
One.
The final game of the season when they decided to go ahead and let him play.
Right. Yeah.
If he struggles and he gets fired, how much damage did you do to your rookie quarterback already? Like, did you throw him in the frying pan? Because we're playing, I don't know what happened. Yeah. Did we do a veteran and he just sat there? If you did a veteran and he sat, that's a little different. But that new coach coming in has no idea what he has in this guy who's now in his second year. If he played and did poorly because the rest of the team is poor and your coach is shitty and everybody, as soon as bad stuff happened, they're like, he's getting fired. Because that's what you're going to have. Everybody, it. That's what happened with Dan Reeves. Everybody knew he was out of there. If Daboll rolls in, we saw it first game of the season, second down, bad play, third down, boom, we're punting against the Vikings. Boos were raining down on the first series.
And it's going to be the exact same thing, but with the coach this year. It's
exactly.
The exact same thing, except with the coach.
And if you cause, lack of a better way of saying this, I know it's a word you're not supposed to use anymore, but if you retard the growth of your rookie quarterback because you have a coach that you probably are going to fire, then there's no point in him being there. If you're going to go rookie and it's Sanders, by the way, he's going to bring a whole lot to this organization. And I don't mean just on the field. He has his own podcast. He's got a huge following. His dad's freaking famous. ESPN, Fox, everybody's going to follow this dude everywhere. The spotlight will be on the Giants like there's no tomorrow. You roll out Daboll, the second, it's going to be Daboll's fault. If Sanders struggles, it's Daboll's fault.
The one thing that concerns me about people like when Thibodeau came out and Sanders this year is Bill Parcells used to ask prospective draft prospects, what are the three most important things in your life? And he said if football wasn't in the top two, he didn't want to have anything to do with that guy. So the thing that scares me a little bit about Sanders is what Cy says. It's the how much is it more important for him, his brand? Is his brand more important to him than football? That's the thing that scares me. And I've got to, and I'm going to be brutally honest here. I have not gone back and looked at these quarterbacks yet. So I'm not going to be on here and say I know. Plus, I wouldn't know anyways because no one can rate and judge these quarterbacks.
Well, I mean,
even the experts. But I want to go back and I want to go look at these quarterbacks before I make a strong statement. But I do get a little bit concerned about when you got a guy that's very concerned about his brand, and he's got a big posse around him, and dad's involved and that kind of thing. That doesn't mean I'm discounting him. I'm not saying but it is something that you've got to take into account, especially if dad is going to be involved in his professional career too. So it's just something to think about. And it's, again, if the next coach comes in, does he want to deal with that or not? And is he going to want to get rid of it? For instance, I can see the next coach that comes in here that's having a problem with a lot of the personalities on this team. Somebody might come in here and say, some of the names that we've talked about before, the Thibodeaus, the Hyatts, the Bankses, they may say, Banks, tremendous player, but I don't want a player on my team that quits on a play. I don't want a guy like Hyatt who's not a physical wide receiver. So we were talking about the San Fran coaching tree. What do their wide receivers are known for? They're all really good blockers and they're all involved in the running game.
Right.
That's not Hyatt. So if you get somebody like that, he might not be a good fit. Even if he ended up being a good player, he may not be a good fit for this thing. So anyways.
No, you just said something that made me think of one other thing of why when you hire somebody that it has to be the right person and the organization has to be together. Like
it does.
Like the players you're going to bring in, and you just brought up something that I keep wanting to mention. How many effing times are we going to call a running play, whether it's the quarterback, whether it's a sweep around, whether it's just a handoff running wide, where you put Wan'Dale Robinson in motion to be one of the lead blockers? He can't block. He's tiny.
Yeah.
And he gets called for holding. He's doing the best. Look how small he is.
Yeah.
But if that's the team you're trying to run, like you talked about, you need a Deebo Samuel. You need to have a Jawan Jennings who's your third or fourth receiver, but that guy still puts up some pretty good numbers when he's forced into play. Bigger guys, physical guys, they can run, they can block. You don't have a Wan'Dale leading the way on the outside.
Right. And that's where you worry about the McDonald's and the Chris Mara influence is, again, if you have to have somebody come in who's going to run their system, you don't want somebody else in the room banging the table for somebody that doesn't fit the system. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but again, some things have not. There have been some constants in this organization that haven't changed, and they're two of the constants. So everyone's got to be on the same page, and I would get a strong personality coach out there. I don't know enough. Cy said something very interesting. He said he likes to watch the interviews of the assistant coaches on other teams to get a feel for their personality. I don't do that, but that would be a good way to start getting, I would like this Cohen guy. I would like to see what he sounds like, that kind of thing. So, and that's not the end all be all, because Joe Judge sounded great in front of a microphone. I remember his first press conference. All the Giants fans were like, "Yeah, this guy's great. He's awesome."
Well, yeah, and you know what? We were all guilty of assumed success by osmosis. Because he was around Bill Belichick, we thought, "Hey, we've got the next young Bill Belichick guy." We couldn't get Bill B.
The part.
And yeah, you know what I hate about that? I don't want somebody who talks a good game that I can't actually prove. And if you say things that just kind of like you were never in that position to really prove it, like he was not the reason the Patriots were successful. Bill Belichick was. you might have learned stuff from him, and that's great. But he talked very arrogantly, and I think the Giants liked that. He came in, we're going to do this. Same with, McAdoo talking about taking care of the Duke, and all this other. The only guy who didn't fit that mold was Shermer, because we brought the adult in who was milquetoast. That's what we came up with. He's basically milquetoast. I think right now the biggest thing is with the Sanders part that scares the crap out of me is just, I don't know how good he is. I know he's pretty good, but I also know when things don't go his way, he has no problem talking about who was at fault. He threw his offensive line under the bus repeatedly last year and did so even early on this year after they got beat by Nebraska.
And that's not good for a quarterback. If that does in the locker room, that doesn't go down well in the locker room.
His name's
I've seen enough football over the decades to know, not just the Giants, I'm talking about other teams, that doesn't go down well.
His name earns him stuff in college, and his dad is the coach there. In the NFL, it's going to gain you media stuff, but with the players, that's not going to gain a whole lot. You're going to walk in, they're going to expect, we expect you to be, Shadeur Sanders, the number 1 pick in the draft. That's what worries me. Cam Ward, I think he has some flaws, and he doesn't have the name, but I think he's at least Michael Penix-like in terms of his overall passing ability. He does take chances. He's a little bit more, I think he's more athletic than a Penix. He doesn't have the previous knee injuries and stuff. I think he can move around a little bit more, but he'll take chances. But you better have a coach that's ready to do that. Now, Sanders, I'm going to throw one thing out there, and I'm just curious of your thoughts. I joked before about, would the Giants actually consider trying to bring the Sanders group as one, Dion?
I can't see that.
I can't either.
I can't see that. I don't think they'll do that.
But
the Giants.
But would they be willing? Would they think, if the advice was given to them, to bring Pat Shurmur on as the offensive coordinator, even though he used to be the coach? He's the coordinator for Sanders. If you want to keep continuity,
they have shown no issues in the past, the Giants, of bringing back guys. So like they even brought back they've brought back guys before. I don't see a problem with that. I don't see an issue with that. And I do want to give Sanders credit for one thing. Again, I have not looked at a lot of film of him or anything like that, but there is an element to his game that's appealing. It's not just he's able to, like Cy said, he can take a lot of punishment, and Cy was kind of mocking that, saying, well, we have that in Daniel Jones, but that's nothing. But there is something to be said about toughness and being able to not, still beat your opponent after you, like, look at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow can get sacked 9 times in a game and still beat you at the end.
Right.
And I do have a thing. One thing I've noticed with quarterbacks today in today's game is they have to have a certain degree of improvisation to their game. That when the play breaks down, they can make something special happen. And Daniel never had that. Daniel Jones, you and I have said over and over again, he's robotic, he's mechanical, whatever.
Yep.
But I don't want a mechanical robotic. And as much as he didn't win anything, the one thing that I admired about Tony Romo's game was, God damn it, you thought you had him at times, and he would spin around and do something and still make a play down the field when you thought you had him dead to rights. And Mahomes is like that too. So I want somebody who has when a play breaks down, because plays break down all the time in the NFL now. You can't get a great offensive line, or it's very rare. The Eagles have it, but it's very rare to be able to get 5 guys across the board where you got a wall. Your plays are going to break down. You want to have a guy that can make a play when the play, and not just every now and then. That's part of his DNA.
Right.
He does it on the game to bite. So I would. You want guys who can process. You got guys who know where to throw the football. But I want somebody who's a little bit magical with the ball in his hands when everything breaks down. And the Giants haven't had that in a long time. Eli didn't really have that either. That's why that play in the Super Bowl is so great with the Tyree catch, is because Eli looked like he was dead. And in most cases, Eli would have been dead there. Eli wasn't known for that kind of thing where he breaks out and throws that play. So I kind of want that.
Well, and the funny thing too, with this, people keep talking about the quarterback class is not as good as last year. And right now, last year's looks very good, or this year's looks very good.
Yes.
You don't know about McCarthy. He hasn't played.
Right.
But Penix is now playing, and he was fine. He wasn't great, I mean, I think if the Giants even had a halfway decent team, we win that game. But he was fine. But the other quarterbacks have played pretty darn well. This class is getting thinner by the day. Alar's going back.
Yeah.
There are rumors that Ewers is going to go back. There's rumors that Beck might go back. So you start going, all of a sudden, you've got Sanders Ward, Milroe, who Cy loves, and I see it. It's really hard to say I could see the Giants training back up. Other people are saying, oh, no, he's going to go top 10. I don't know. He doesn't show enough passing yet to say he's going to go top 10, but teams are desperate. Again, we're
one of those teams. The Giants almost have to draft a quarterback.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, unless you sign, unless we get a starting quarterback from another team, you don't have a choice. You don't have anybody.
The Giants are so screwed right now that they're almost forced to do something that is a roll of the dice. That's a terrible position to be in, but that's what this GM has done to them, and the previous GM. They've put themselves in this position where they're almost forced to take somebody and just pray that the guy pans out. That's a terrible position to be in.
It's weird to think that we met with Russell Wilson, but the rumor is that we told him you would be a backup only. You're not coming to you're not coming to
stupid that looks now.
You're not coming to compete. Why would you? If you really wanted him, right? Why would you tell him that? Why wouldn't you just say, listen, we'll give you, I know we can get you dirt cheap because you're getting a whole bunch of money from the Broncos, but I'm going to tell you what, we'll give you $5 million instead of $1 million, because I think the Steelers offered $1 million. We'll give you $5 million. We want you to come and be the backup. I don't know how things are going to work with Daniel, but if we need to, we're ready to pivot to you. Let's see what happens. Instead, you go, you're only coming to be the backup. You're not competing. That's the only other thing that then starts to hint that this was all either going to work with Daniel Jones or it was not going to work.
Yeah. Or somebody was, after the fact, the meeting that took place, somebody was narrative spinning at that point. The agent wanted to do that, or the Giants, or whatever. I don't know. Who knows? But again, there was no backup plan for Daniel, viable backup plan for Daniel. And like you said earlier, DeVito's on the roster. You keep a third quarterback on the roster, on the 53-man roster, but now they're going back and forth and flip-flopping. And some of that was due to the injury that DeVito had originally, but he could have played now. And now it looks like Locke has a shoulder, so now DeVito may come in. It just the whole thing just seems like a mess right now.
Well, so when you jump the backup, you basically said, I don't think he's the guy, or you want to lose. But I don't know that I quite frankly, I can't tell you, have we played better with Locke? I think Locke has a better arm. I think he makes some idiotic decisions. You watch him play and you're like, why the hell are you bailing so fast? Or you start running and then all of a sudden he's going, instead of perpendicular, he's going parallel. I'm like, where the hell are you going?
Yeah.
Like the first down is right there.
Locke was a prayer, and some of us, including myself, thought maybe he'll surprise us based on, he had a couple of moments last year, like against the Eagles, and maybe he'll surprise us. But he looked bad in the preseason before he got hurt, and then he's looked bad since he's been in there, and it's obvious that he's not the answer, and he'll probably be out of the league in a couple of years.
Yeah,
right?
I can't.
One more backup job and in someplace. But he may be out of the league after this. Have you noticed, you were mentioning all these coaches, have you noticed that if you come to the Giants now Shermer landed in the college ranks, but if you're an offensive, defensive, or offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, or a head coach, if you come to the Giants, it's a coach killing position.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
it's not. That's another reason why that they may have trouble attracting people, because people that come here to have their careers die. I mean, even Jason Garrett. I mean, if you
he's in for broadcasting.
I know. I mean, if you come here, your career basically dies, with the exception of Spags, who was only, his last position here was an interim coach. In hindsight, maybe he would have worked out better if they'd who knows? I know people are down on him because of what happened with the Rams, but I have a hard time believing he'd be worse than some of the clowns that we've had here. So
now Spags left to take a head coaching job, then got fired
and came back.
But so I don't think
that's why I think Shermer could come back.
But yeah, but we fired Shermer. We didn't fire Spags.
I know, but I don't. Do you really think that it would matter? I mean, so much time is. Well, again, I don't know.
I don't know. That's why I was asking
know.
the question. For me, I would be like, if you think Sanders is your guy and you think that Shermer has an unbelievably good connection with him, and if that's what Dion's telling you, that, hey, I really think Shermer and Shadeur can really, they work well together, then I bring him on because you had him as a head coach. He certainly knows offense. Then I want to keep that continuity. But who's the head coach?
I'm going to try to stay consistent here. To me, the head coach has got to be a borderline narcissist, strong-willed guy and he makes that decision. And then he has nothing to want to do with Shermer, and that's his call. And I don't care what Mara, if you have a problem with that, then don't hire me. I'm not going to work.
Do you have a preference, offense or defensive coach? Like for a head coach, do you care?
You and I have talked about this before. Because we've gone. Some of this is PTSD with all the offensive minds that we've hired, with the exception of the whiz Joe Judge special teams coach that never was. I'm almost leaning towards a defensive coordinator just out of a sheer reaction, but that's a bad reason why to pick somebody. But part of this is because I grew up under Parcells and he was a defensive guy, and I kind of miss that. I just want a strong personality. I want Tom Coughlin, Bill Parcells were strong personalities, and it was their way or the highway. And I think we need to change it. And the other thing, one last thing I wanted to say, because we should wrap.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up. Yeah.
Tied into all of this, if I'm going to bring this full circle, is John Mara has to start to recognize that the league is different. It's not the same league anymore, and the timetable is not the same anymore. And some of this he's done. Like, he's gotten rid of coaches every 2 to 3 years now, and he's gotten rid of GMs every 4 years now. So I'm not going to say he won't do this type of thing, but for some reason they'll hold on to players though. They'll hold on to Daniel Jones for 6 years, which none of us can understand. But he's got to understand that. Like when people said it's no big deal to re-sign Daniel Jones to a 4-year deal, that's really a 2-year deal. 2 years in the NFL is an eternity now. It wasn't in 1986, but it isn't in 2024. 2 years is an eternity. And that's why I was saying a couple of months ago, don't tell me somebody's safe. It depends on what the record's going to be. And I didn't think it would be this bad. I didn't think we wouldn't win another game. We didn't win another game. When I made that statement, I thought we might have 4 wins. We didn't win. We're not going to win another game. When I made that statement,
we better not.
I mean, yeah. So I don't see us winning another game, even if the Eagles play their backup. So I don't. Anyways, I don't want to jinx it, but I don't see it. So
it would take a lot. The good thing is that, and then we will wrap it up. The good thing is that right now in the league, there are still things up in the air. I know Ray in Arlington on BBI, BigBlueInteractive.com for those who don't know.
Ray's awesome with those things. I pin it every time I see it. So
breaking down the potential of where the Giants could be drafting, the way things are falling. But one of the things he pointed out is like where the Eagles are right now, what they have to play for. And quite frankly, there are a number of scenarios that would require them to continue to play to win. Even if it's not the number 1 seed, they haven't locked up the division yet. Dallas, by beating Tampa Bay, keeps kind of the pressure on that they're going to be a tough foe to play. If Dallas beats Philadelphia, who right now may be without Jalen Hurts, then Philadelphia has to win in the final week of the season. I think they play Washington last. Am I right about that? No, they play us last. What am I talking about? They have to beat us last. Dallas, they have Dallas before. So they have stuff to play for. But they also have the number 1 seed is still up in the air. Minnesota is right on the heels of Detroit. Minnesota has a game with Green Bay. If they were to lose to Green Bay, but Detroit loses to San Francisco, everything is still kind of on for that following week. So there are different scenarios. But at the same time, you could put all the backups on the Eagles on the field, and you put all of our backups, which most of them are,
backups are playing now.
Which most of them are currently starters. I'm like, when you have to go, I don't know who the hell Lane is. I'm like, I know he's a defensive back. We brought him up. I don't know who he is. Yeah. Durden at defensive tackle. Who the hell is that? I don't know. Garcia. I don't know. When you get all these guys, you're just like, we're not beating anybody unless that team literally shows up and goes, you know what? we're just going to pull half the team off the field. We'll go our 6 against your 11. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
That's the only way I see us winning, because I
Yeah.
think I don't think we're tanking. I think we're at the bottom of the tank.
Yeah, we're bad. I mean, the Giants wouldn't beat the Raiders. I was saying last night
Oh, no.
after the game, we went out to dinner, and I said the sad thing is we're as the game was still going on. I said we don't even have the first pick, and the team that might have the first pick would beat the crap out of us if we played them right now. That's how bad the season was. So
I think almost any of those guys.
My daughter was there and she had her phone out. I said, "What's the score? What's the score? What's going on?" And everyone at the table was like, "Dad, why do you care about what the Jaguars are doing?" I'm like, "We need the first pick," and I'm not sure even we need the first pick.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you were all excited. You're just all excited, and you open your present and you got socks.
What if the best quarterback in this draft is Milroe? What if he is the best quarterback? And before people out there say bullshit, look at this past draft right now. All the quarterbacks other than McCarthy are playing now. And none of them, and again, it's way too early in Penix, but none of them are looking like crap. And the guy's having the most trouble right now because of the team he's playing on is Caleb Williams. But I have one goal. My last comment, because we almost went 2 hours. Holy crap!
Yeah.
It's for those complaining about we're going too late. We're only doing one show because it's Christmas week, so that we're only doing one show. I only have one goal on this rest of the season. In terms of the actual games being played, or 2 goals, I should say. One is the Giants, hopefully keeping the first pick, even though. But the more important goal to me right now is somebody knock the Eagles out of the playoffs. If someone knocks the Eagles out of the playoffs, I'll be happy with this year. That's my number one goal, because I do not want to see Barkley in the Super Bowl, for God's sakes, and that would be a disaster. So that's my number one goal. So
I'll do 2 for me. I don't want the Giants to win another game. I don't know if I care about the number 1 pick. But the number 1 pick allows you to do something. If we want to trade it to get other stuff,
right,
that it gives us something. But if not, then we pick the guy that we want, and hopefully you do the right thing.
Right.
The second one, I like where you're at. I'll just stick more specific to the Giants. I really want to see Evan Neal pulled off tackle and placed at guard and see if he can be anything, because he's not a tackle. He will not be a tackle in the NFL. He is a liability. And you got to see if he can be a William Roberts.
There's only 2 games left, though. I don't think there's even enough time. I mean, they can play him at guard, but that's not even enough sample size. It'll be next year is going to be it for him. He'll either have to play guard next year under the new coach, or he's toast. I don't think they'll do the 5th-year option.
Jesus, they better not.
And then we'll have to go from there. So, I do think. I have to go back and watch the tape. It was kind of an up and down game for him. He wasn't doing badly in the beginning, and on the second interception, I thought Roten had a bigger mess up than.
Well, sure, but I mean, what the hell was he doing, though?
Oh, yeah, but some coaches teach on his quick pass. Some coaches teach that. I don't know if he was supposed to do that with the dive at the feet.
But even if you are.
That wasn't a good look. It wasn't.
Go back and look at it.
It wasn't a good look. But to me, that didn't cause the break. It was the Van Roten.
No, I agree with you. But he's 3 centimeters away from breaking his own neck by diving into the ground.
It didn't look good. It's not a good look. And for somebody who the knock on him is on the ground too much, that doesn't look. But I thought the announcer was being a little bit unfair there. I thought Van Roten was really the guy that.
He definitely.
But again, bad things happen to bad teams, and that's what the Giants are right now. And. Yeah. And the Daboll's press conference at the end of the game to me was just really eye-opening. I was almost, if he is not being fired, he deserves an Oscar, because that was a press conference a coach gives that knows he's fired.
Yeah, I agree.
If people haven't seen it, watch the press conference after the Atlanta game. To me, that was a coach that knows he's gone. So, and if he isn't, he knows he's coming back, he deserves an Oscar for that performance.
Don't be surprised if we hear that he's gone before the last game of the season. And don't be surprised if he ends up at the University of North Carolina.
Oh, wow. That would be a hell of a prediction.
Freddie Kitchens is now at the University of North Carolina. Steve Belichick is leaving Washington after their bowl game to go to Carolina to be with Bill Belichick. He's bringing the old gang back. He's got Lombardi, who apparently is now the general manager in college, which they didn't have that position before, but now they do. So they bring Lombardi down there. So I guess he can shit on the Giants at the college level now. Who cares? But Belichick's bringing his old crew back together. Would not surprise me if Daboll, or he ends up at Alabama.
The thought that has entered my mind, which is probably wrong, is I've gotten the strong vibe that Daboll doesn't even want to be here anymore.
I agree.
When I watch him, it's like he doesn't even want to be here. So again, again, I'm probably reading too much into it. And
no, I think you're onto something. You can kind of tell. What guy keeps saying it's on him now? Before, he didn't say stuff like that. It was always, we're playing the best players we got. We're going to watch the tape. They're trying really hard. Blah, blah. He goes, that's on me. That's coaching. Yeah, we do the best. That's
he
coaching.
gives me the impression he's going through the motions and he's just waiting to this ends so he can get out of here. That's what I'm getting. That's the vibe I'm getting from him. And that is my last comment. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to everybody out there. And for those who don't know, please keep prayers in mind for John's father, who's battling cancer right now. And that's always tough around the holidays, and we've been keeping him in our prayers. And a lot of people out there know what that's like. So keep John in your thoughts too right now and his family. But Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to everyone out there.
To you as well, and I appreciate that. And I'll leave it there because I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
So like, subscribe, comment, and we'll try to make it shorter next time, I promise. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you again.